Hey everybody, this is Nick Baldwin, and today I'm being joined by PFL featherweight Brendan Loughnane, who's coming off a big knockout win over Sheymon Moraes at PFL 1 last week. Brendan, how are you?
Life's pretty good right now.
I can imagine. Congratulations again on the win. It was a great performance. Just how are you feeling 5 days after that knockout?
5 days after, back in the gym, already on my second session of the day, and it's one in the afternoon. So I'm straight back to training, straight back to keeping that same hunger that I went in that fight with, and I'm looking to do that to every single one of them guys this year.
And this was your first stoppage win since 2018. I think your last three or four were decisions. How good did it feel to get back into that stoppage circle, that column?
Oh God, it's just made so much difference. I really, really needed that stoppage deep down for a lot of reasons. I needed to prove to myself that I could still do it. I needed to prove that I still had the power at featherweight. I needed to send a message out to the rest of the division, and we did all the above.
For sure. Afterward, you tweeted, I think your first tweet after the fight was, "Don't ever doubt me again." Why did you tweet that?
A couple of reasons. One, a lot of people was putting me as Sheymon winning that fight. And it's so funny. I actually watched, someone tagged me in a breakdown of the fight, and I watched it, and it was like, oh, we think Brendan will win, but he's just going to do what Brendan Loughnane does. He's just going to pick him off, move. We know he's not going to finish him. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then it just lit a fire up my ass. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, I'm just going to keep that same energy.
So you think, why do you think people were doubting you? Because, you were on a big winning streak. Yes, they weren't knockouts, but is it just the fact that you were going to the judges? Why do you think people were doubting you a little bit?
Dana White, that whole thing, a lot was put, when he said what he said, people, some people started to believe it really and be like, oh, is Brendan Loughnane not this finisher? He's not this guy that I know that I can be, and I've proved in the gym that I can be, and I've proved in the cage. Just because I've not done it for a few years, people have short memories, and it just meant a lot to me to get that finish, really.
Yeah. A lot of people were calling this fight with Sheymon Moraes sort of like the people's main event, and people were really looking forward to it. And I think people thought it was going to be like a back and forth, pretty competitive fight. It proved that that wasn't the case at all. Quick win by you. What were your expectations for the fight, and how did they compare to how the fight actually unfolded?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of people did think it was going to be fight of the night. They even voted it fight of the night, prelims main event. So everyone was getting really excited about it. But I knew that Sheymon Moraes was flat-footed. He relies on his Muay Thai style, and I just knew that with my speed, my in and out, and the ferocity that my shots would come in at, that it would really give him problems. And although people were thinking it was going to be fight of the night, I kind of knew that my speed was going to be far too much for Sheymon.
Yeah. And you were the only finish on a card full of decisions. I mean, it's not, maybe not something you really think about as as a big achievement or something that matters, but I mean, PFL's return card, you're the only finish, everyone's talking about it. How big could that be just for your career and your popularity moving forward?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head with everything you just said. It's massive for me in my career. The only finish of the night, the only one that got 6 points. I'm pretty much through to the playoffs now, unless something goes really wrong. I secured myself straight through, and I want to be the face of PFL. Yeah, they've made a lot of new signings, but they already had a really good signing in me. So I'm just excited to keep going and to keep that same energy in each fight now coming forward.
And as you said, being the only guy to get a knockout on this card and in the featherweight tournament, you are in first place with 6 points. I don't know if that guarantees you a spot in the playoff. As you said, I mean, it's pretty for sure unless something goes really wrong. Does that take the pressure off you going into your next fight, just knowing that you already have 6 points, you're already in first place?
Yes and no. I mean, it's great to have 6 points, but I really want to win this tournament, and I really want to just go through everyone. Like Emiliano Sordi, one of my teammates last year, just knocked out all 5 people and just went straight through. And he's my inspiration for this tournament, and that's exactly what I plan on doing.
Yeah. And of course, like, you're confident in your own skills. You're confident you're going to go all the way. But in the eyes of a lot of people and the fans, you kind of sense that people are considering you the early front runner, because I know Lance Palmer fell short. He's the reigning 2-time champion. So that is sort of like a guy that a lot of people thought would probably make it far as well, who's already had a loss. Like, do you think, just sort of given your performance and maybe him falling short, people are looking at you as the guy right now?
Well, you have to put me as the favorite. I mean, I've got the most points. I had the most impressive performance, so you've got to put me as the favorite, as the front runner. And I'm going to be honest. This is brutal honesty. I didn't see anything that I can't take care of in that tournament. Nobody stood out to me. Bubba Jenkins looked good, but I still think I'll beat Bubba Jenkins comfortably. So, I mean, let's see how this whole thing plays out. Let's see who my next matchup is, and we'll go from there.
I was going to ask you a bit later, but I'll ask now. Like, it doesn't really sound like, do you have your eye on any featherweights? None of them really stood out to you. Is there someone you think could be in the final with you, or you're thinking might go far in this tournament, or at least just somebody you want to fight? Like, did anybody stand out?
Yeah, I like Bubba. Bubba looked really good against Lance. He beat the 2-time champion. He out-wrestled him, and I like him. I like his character. I think he's funny. I think he's hilarious, and I think he's good for the sport, and he's good for PFL, and I think they could build us two up to be a great final.
For sure. You're a veteran of the sport at this point. A lot of people kind of consider you this up-and-comer, but you've had 23 pro fights. You've been around for a long time. But a lot of people consider this your best performance. A lot of people had that reaction after the fight. Do you consider it your best performance as well?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. I mean, I've had a few good fights that people have not seen and a few good performances, but in terms of the scale of the amount of people that were watching and the eyes were on me, and then the pressure that was on me as well, after being a big signing for PFL and after what happened with the Contender Series and all that, there was a pressure on me to perform, and diamonds are made under pressure, and that's exactly what happened that night.
What do you think? Is there anything else that makes this sort of go past your other performances, your other 20 wins, and makes this number one? You mentioned the pressure, but just, I mean, the fact that you knocked him out in a fight that a lot of people thought was going to be competitive, it was a quick finish. What makes this your best performance in your mind?
Well, yeah, you said that. So one of the pre-fight interviews, I said, well, everybody thinks it's going to be a close fight. So when I go in and wipe out Sheymon Moraes, everyone's going to start taking me seriously. And I said that in the pre-fight interview, and that's exactly come true. It's exactly what I said was going to happen. So I'm glad that the world finally got to see my potential, after Dana, the whole thing on the Contender and the way that went down, and even on the tough and all that. It's been a long road for me, and to finally get put under that sort of pressure and have an opponent where everyone thinks he's going to beat me or is going to do really well and going to be fighting tonight, and to go in and just absolutely whitewash him, it just makes people start taking me extremely serious now.
In a fight like that, I'm thinking back to the finish and the sort of finishing sequence. I believe you hurt him, and then he recovered a little bit, and then you finish him off a few seconds later. In that moment, is it tough to just not go crazy? Like, your opponent is hurt, but you don't want to get too crazy. Like, is it in that kind of situation, is it a little tough to not get reckless almost?
What was crazy is Sheymon's game plan. Sheymon ran across the cage as fast as he could, and he got hit with a right hand in the first 2 seconds of that fight, and that first right hand really set the precedent to what was going to happen, because that hurt him early. I think he put on a lot of size for this fight. He's probably on a lot of Mexican supplements, and thought to himself, I'm going to get hold of this little skinny Brendan, I'm going to throw him around and I'm going to hurt him. And it just shows that my timing, my speed, my power, everything was there. And he got a right hand in the face very early, and he was on the back foot, and he was backpedaling from then, and then a succession of about 10 right hands landed. So it was the killer instinct really did come out of me once I seen him hurt.
Yeah. And your striking looked especially sharp compared to even your fight on Contender Series or last couple PFL fights. In my mind, anyways, that's just sort of my takeaway, like right when the fight was happening. Did you feel that as well? Like, is there noticeable differences just in the past year or so to your game?
sometimes you just on, and I was on. Like sometimes everything just goes right. You have the perfect camp, the perfect weight cut, and you're just on. And that was my night. Hopefully it stays like that, but I know that it won't. You know, you can only hope to have performances like that. So as well as I'm preparing now, back in San Diego, I'm back in the gym, and let's not forget, every one of them featherweights had to go for a 3-round, 15-minute war. So I guarantee they wouldn't have been the first in the gym Monday morning. So this is a massive advantage that I've got right now.
That's actually an interesting point. It is a big advantage. And what does that mean to going back to what you were talking about earlier? You're the only guy who got a quick knockout, 6 points. But as you said, that also means you're fresh and the other guys aren't. How big of a deal really is that going into the next round?
Some of them guys were really, really bust up. They had really tough fights. So, you know, it's only 6 weeks till my next fight. I'm already in fight shape. My weight's already low. I'm just ticking over beautifully now. And like I say, I know a lot of them guys are going to be carrying knocks, niggles, injuries, you know, especially like the Korean guy, Chris Wade, Anthony Diaz. All these guys were banged up. So, you know, good luck trying to recover and get back in the cage in 6 weeks. It's not as easy as that.
Do you know when you find out who you're fighting next?
No idea.
Okay. But are you hoping to have a name pretty soon, given we're only 6 weeks out?
Yeah, of course. Hopefully it's this week.
Okay. You mentioned the Dana White Contender Series snub from a couple years ago. That whole situation, it was a big deal at the time. If Dana White saw that finish, I don't know. I don't believe he's commented on it. But if you showed him that highlight, that knockout, what do you think his reaction would be?
I'm sure Dana White doesn't lose any sleep over Brendan Loughnane. You know, he's got enough going on, and I don't lose any sleep over him right now. I'm on my journey. I'm going to be a world champion and a millionaire. So it doesn't really get much better than that, really, does it?
No, fair enough. As I mentioned earlier, the defending two-time champ Lance Palmer fell short. You mentioned Bubba Jenkins. You were impressed by him. Were you surprised to see Palmer lose for the first time in, I think, 4 years?
No, not at all. I mean, Bubba's a better wrestler than him. Bubba had his number. Bubba was in his head. Bubba did everything he needed to do in that fight. And, you know, you can't stay king forever. So now there's some fresh blood in, and it's going to be very interesting how it all's going to shape up.
Yeah. And I know we spoke after your fight on the Contender Series with Bell Aljo, and you weren't really too worried about it at the time, but obviously you were disappointed not to get the UFC contract. Does it feel like with PFL, now that you're finally in the tournament, it feels like you can fully move on from that? You're not worried about the UFC whatsoever? You don't care? I mean, what's better than $1 million?
I mean, you just said it yourself. What is better than $1 million? No matter what organization it is, I always wanted to be a world champion. So, laser focus from Brendan right now. Training my ass off. As you can see, I've been with Dominic Cruz this morning. We're back training together every day. I've got Jeremy Stevens, Miles. I've got all these guys around at the minute. So, I'm in great hands, great company. And I will be keeping my head down, focus, and get this million.